Part 3. Before the reorganization of the states in 1956, the districts of Dharwad, Karwar, Belagaum, and Bijapur were part of Bombay Presidency. As a result, these districts bear a greater similarity to the culture of Maharashtra than to the traditions of the erstwhile Mysore state in the south. When they were all unified to form the state of Karnataka, these four districts were referred as a North Karnataka. Even though Kannada is the common language of the state, the language of Dharwad and other three districts has its own accent, intonation, and even vocabulary. Bijapur, home of the famous Gol Gumbaz, one of the largest domes in the world, is known for its salubrious climate, fertile land, and tasty produce. There is a Kannada proverb that says, once the Doni Halla is full of water, the streets of Bijapur are full of jowar. Then, for the next 4 to 5 years, people didn't have to worry about their crops. Karwar is on the west coast and rich in natural resources. The Mountains tower over the region. Belgaum, Belgaum, situated on the border of Maharashtra and Karnataka, has a lot of Maharashtrian influence and is extremely cultured. But Dharwad stands apart. It is city of hills, education, and music. Great exponents of the Kirana Gharana belong to this town. It is home to some of the oldest education institutions and is known for its peace loving literature people. There was a time when people in Karnataka said, if you throw a stone in Dharwad, it will hit either a musician or a writer. Though Hubli is only 22 kilometers away, it does not possess the serenity of Dharwad. It is more of the bustling commercial center for cotton and red chili trade, among other things. In the olden days, some families from this region had helped the Peshwas of Maharashtra. As a token of appreciation, they were given some lands in the area. Having hereditary ownership, these lands were passed from one generation to the next. As a result, the landlords had different titles, and over a period of time, the titles became the surnames of those families like Deshpande, Jahargirdar, Inamdar, Desai. Until a few decades back, these landlords, including the Deshpande, used to own vast land which were tilled by the landless labor they employed. Most of the time, the landlords did not even visit their fields, and yet the people who had worked for them for years could never hope to own even a tiny piece of land. Since they considered themselves aristocrats, the landowners did not believe in working. They spent their time indulging themselves in all sort of bad habits. It was purely patriarchal society, where the head of the family decided everything, be it arranging a marriage, making a donation to temple, or an ordinary household matter. The women were always in the background, suppressed and subservient, irrespective of their age. After India got independence and land reforms were introduced, most of these landowners lost much of their property. Suddenly, they found their incomes drastically reduced and their existence that of the lower middle class. They had not cultivated, neither did they know any skills, nor were they used to hard work. But their family pride, arrogance, and ego remained as before. They were like a torn Banaras sari. Though Srimati and Shrikant had such a common cultural background, their temperaments were very different. Once upon a time, their families had everything, but today they had nothing more than a huge ancestral house and a few pieces of land. They found it hard to maintain the old house, but they couldn't abandon it and live elsewhere. It was an issue of family prestige. Though they were neighbors, their forefathers always fought like cats and dogs at the slightest provocation. Actually, it was their mountain like egos that was responsible for the continued enmity. Another bone of contention was that the two families belonged to different sects. One family worshipped Shiva and was called Samartha. The other was a Vishnu devotee and hence Vaishnava. While this was not an issue for the men, it was a major factor for women to fight. The end result was that there was no communication at all between the two families. Srimati's grandmother, Rindaka, should have been born in Kshatriya, a warrior family, for she was extremely aggressive. She was ready to fight with anybody, anytime, anywhere. She did not even require a person because she disagreed with everything. People used to say that her poor husband Bindappa could not put up with his wife and so had died at an early age. But the truth was that Bindappa had died because he was an old and had been a slave of many vices. Although he was rich, he was arrogant, uneducated, and chauvinistic. Rindaka was his third wife. They had only one son, Srikant. Rindaka had become a widow at a very young age, and probably that had made her frustrated and irritable. Though she was uneducated, she was an intelligent lady. Srikant grew up like his father, but with an education, he was not very bright and extremely lazy. It took him several years to complete his degree course, and when he did, no one would give him job. He was not too keen to find one either. So he stayed in Hubli though he was jobless. His daily routine was to wake up any time after 10 a.m., play cards, get home and relax. Never in his life had he earned a single paisa. Rindaka had hoped that marriage would make him responsible. As is customary in North Karnataka, a marriage alliance would not go beyond the four districts. It is very unlikely that one marries across the Tungabhadra. Hence, from the neighboring city of Dharwad, the educated Kamla was chosen. By the time Kamla came to her husband's house, all the land has disappeared due to the Tenancy Act. Though the economic situation became very delicate, the pride and arrogance of the family remained intact. Sensitivity, sorry, sensitive Kamla gogged the situation quickly and took up the teaching job at the local school. She was the sole breadwinner breadwinner for the family now. But still, Rindaka would show her authority as a mother in law and utter pungent words that would hurt her. Kamla, an introvert, never said anything. She neither looked down upon her husband nor defied her mother in law. After many years of Shrikant and Kamla's marriage, Srimati was born, and indeed she brought a change in their lives. Though Shrikant Rao Deshpande paid no attention to his wife, he would always be concerned about his daughter. Srimati grew up with a jobless father, a domineering grandmother, and a timid, loving mother. Kamla took the utmost care to bring Srimati up with strong values and a good education. Srimati inherited her love for literature from her mother and even as a child spoke pure Kannada. But she would argue with her grandmother and also question her father. She grew up bright, extremely accommodating but introvert young girl. Her neighbor Shrikant Deshpande had different story. Shrikant's family were Samrats. His father Rangana Deshpande was a shade better than his neighbor Shrikant Deshpande, but he died when his son was still in middle school. He had been a clerk at post office. Gangaka, his wife, was a cunning, manipulative, fierce, and extremely practical lady. Rangana had left behind two children. The elder child, Rama, was an average looking girl, and not at all good student, whereas the younger one, Shrikant, was good looking and very intelligent. He was apple of his mother's eye. She had pinned all her dreams on him. Normally, quarrels would arise between Rindaka and Gangaka, the difference in age being no barrier. Gangaka was actually Kamala's age, but because of her reticent nature, Kamala didn't fight with anybody. Gangaka had an older brother, Shenappa. He was a sweet talker but a very shrewd man. He was the only one who had stood by Gangakka when her husband passed away. No one but himself had known the reason then. He had four ugly daughters and he had an eye on Shrikant, hoping that at some point in time he would be able to get Shrikant to marry one of his daughters. Otherwise, he was not a man to help a single person without a vested interest. Rama took longer than usual to complete her degree. As she was not good looking, it was a little difficult to find groom for her. With great difficulty, Shinappa finally found one, and soon Rama was happily married. When she gave birth to a son, it was treated like a quite an achievement. Gangaka felt that her daughter was very fortunate. Shrikant was unlike his sister Rama, who had inherited all the bad qualities of their mother. But Shrikant focused on his duties, his studies, and didn't care about the rivalry between two families or Shinappa's role in their lives. In the space between two houses, there was a Bakula tree. The Bakula is about the size of a neem tree and has lovely canopy of dark green leaves. The tree lives for at least 100 years, and the more it rains, the more flowers it bears. The Bakula flower is very unusual. It is tiny, pale, greenish brown in color, and is shaped like a crown. As flowers goes, it is unattractive, but it has a divine fragrance. Even when the flowers dry and become brown, the mild fragrance remains. When the tree is in bloom, the flowers form a carpet on ground beneath it. The bakla flower is favorite of the gods too. It was May end, and the hot summer of Hubli was coming to an end. The ripe fruits of mango tree hinted the end of mango season. Farmers eagerly awaited Shravan, the rainy season, a season that brings happiness to nature as well as human beings. There are so many poems written and sung by Shravan in Dharwad. It is indeed an inspiration for poets, but a hurdle for young mothers and the aged. The Bakula tree stood gracefully, as usual, spreading its fragrance. It was evening, and the flowers lay on the ground, forming a carpet of blossoms. Gangaka Deshpande had a small house in a big compound. She and her husband had wanted to extend it once they become prosperous, but unfortunately, that never happened. Though Gangaka had a bitter tongue, she was hardworking. She did not waste her time after she finished her cooking. She had made a beautiful garden with with many flowering bushes and vegetable plants. It was a part of her ritual to wake up early in the morning, pick flowers, and make garlands to offer at the temple of Railway Ishwar. This was irrespective of the reason. She believed that this kind of deed would bring prosperity and happiness to her children. But Gangaka was very unhappy about one thing, and that was the Bakula tree. It was It stood exactly in the middle of the common compound of the two houses, indicated that it belonged to both of them. Not only did it give flowers, it also gave the best shade. And that's what made Gangakka angry. Nothing would grow in that shade. She thought the tree was a nuisance, that it took up a lot of space. In Gangakka's dictionary, everything was measured in terms of usefulness, be it a human being or some material. So the tree became a bone of contention between the two families. She would keep telling her neighbor to cut off the tree so that she could grow more plants and get some sunshine too. Shrikant's room faced the Bakula tree. Throughout the year, the mild scent of the Bakula wafted in through his window. He had developed a special attachment to these flowers, and so he opposed his mother's idea of cutting the tree. On the other side, nobody except Srimati had the time to tend the garden. Her father Srikantrao Deshpande had no time for any work, let alone looking after the Bakula tree. Kamala would always be busy with her schoolwork, and Rindaka was an old woman. Rindaka did not want to cut the tree, not because she loved Bakulas, but because Gangakka wanted to. In spite of battle between these two fierce women, the Bakula continued to bloom every day.